Welcome to Trinity Radio. I'm Braxton Hunter, and along with me is Nick Peters and
Jonathan Pritchett.
And we are glad that you are here today. And Nick, we are excited that you are with us, the Nick Peters. And so we wanted to go ahead and let you open up by maybe telling us a little bit about you and I have been friends. In fact, you initially contacted me several years ago when I released a book called Core Facts, and we did a discussion about that on your show. So this is great because I'm finally getting the opportunity to repay the favor. So tell us, Nick, who you are, what you do, and any resources that you want to plug.
Well, first off, Braxton, thanks for having me on. I would like to go ahead and clear something up also about me, because there's a lot of confusion in this area about me. So I want to go ahead and set the record straight and let everyone know that I affirm the virgin birth. So now that we know that I affirm the virgin birth, we can go on ahead.
Which we also affirm.
Yes. I'm pleased to hear that you affirm the virgin birth, which I do affirm. That my work is with my own ministry, Deeper Waters Apologetics. I've just recently started a YouTube channel trying to learn how to do YouTube. I do blogging. I've been doing blogging for maybe 15 or so years. Do a podcast, like you said, getting the best scholars out there and others in the field, and Braxton on my show.
Yeah, thank you.
And notice I haven't been invited, by the way. If that says anything.
We can work on that.
Yeah.
And let's see, I do work with the mentionables as well. We're a small group of lesser known apologists out there that are considered to be worth a mention still. And I live in the Atlanta area. Been married nearly 10 years. The only child we have is a fur baby kitty named Shiro. As we'll be discussing today, I'm on the autism spectrum, and I'm a gamer as well. I love doing my games, and I tell you, it is a sacrifice right now in this interview because I've got the Final Fantasy VII Remake sitting in my PlayStation right now, and I'm still doing this interview, so don't tell me I'm not dedicated to the cause.
That's right. That's right. Well, on that note, Nick, after I get done with my day here in quarantine, which we are still working full days, isn't that right, Dr. Jonathan Pritchett?
Oh, yeah.
And after I get done with my day, I've been playing Jedi Fallen Order on Xbox One, so it looks like we are on opposite sides of the console wars that are going on, Nick.
Well, with this whole quarantine going on, I live in a world now where professional sports isn't going on, that people are told to just stay indoors. When you go out in public, you have to avoid any human contact, stay 6 feet away from one another. It's kind of the thing we've always hoped for in some ways.
Oh man, that's fantastic. Wow. Yeah, so Nick,
I mean, of course, I think we need to be getting back to work and things like this, but on the humorous side, those kinds of things going on, yeah, I could live with that.
Yeah, I can live with it too, actually. Nick, I don't know if you remember, you won't remember this, but we actually used to talk a lot, and we always agreed on a lot of things back on the old theology web. My handle was Trusty, and so I think that's where that's where I first got to know who you were, was following you and JP Holding and all those guys. You posted up, I guess this was what, in the early to mid 2000s or whatever?
Yeah, I'm still active on theology web. I have my own section there, and I'm right next to JP in the university, and if you'll check Amazon, he and I have some ebooks we've written together.
Famously, you wrote a book on inerrancy.
Yeah, I wrote
2 books on inerrancy.
Yeah, I think I had published a review on defining inerrancy back in 2014. I remember when that whole debate kind of took off in 2010. That was kind of a mess, and I think it's still a mess. So.
Oh yes.
people are still sorting all that out. I really did enjoy that book. To be honest, I never read Geisler's book, but I did read yours. So I guess I got the gist of Geisler from all of his posts. But yeah, I remember all that. But Theology Web, I didn't even know that was still active. I'll have to go check that out and see what's, because I don't hear, you don't hear much from Tecton and JP Holding anymore, or at least I haven't heard much. I don't even know what he's up to these days.
He's doing YouTube videos still. I think he's kind of dialing back a bit with other things, which is just fine. He's got his own things he has to be doing, but he's still pretty active.
Oh, well, that's good to hear.
All right, so Nick, you mentioned already that you are
that I affirm the virgin birth.
That you
yes.
affirm the virgin birth. That's right, and which we do affirm. Hey, for a second, because our viewers don't know what that's about. I could try to explain it, but I think you lived it. So tell our audience what that's about.
I was with a friend once in a thread on the Unbelievable Facebook group, and someone was going on about the silence of Paul with not mentioning the virgin birth. And he said, don't you think he would have mentioned it if he believed in it? And I tried to explain that this is part of a high context society, that Paul's letters were episodal letters. They weren't written to teach doctrines like that. They were meant to deal with issues at hand. I mean, if a doctrine related to that, then great, but if not, oh well. So you're not going to find the life of Jesus being written about, per se, in the letters. But then I just said, like, we both are Christians, me and my friend here, and we have pastors that come out every single Sunday to do a sermon, and they don't get up and say that they affirm the virgin birth every time. So we started doing that every single post we made. And for me, a joke is just as funny the 10,000th time as it is the first. And I thought, why stop this? So we took it out, and now we pretty much got a whole movement going. I mean, I had a scholar, very well-known scholar, emailed me a few days ago, wanting to make sure about my P.O. box so he could send me a book he's got. And he said, this one's about Acts, but it doesn't mention anywhere the virgin birth, but I do affirm it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and
it's one of those.
Go ahead.
Well, N.T. Wright had once remarked when he was in the middle of a lot of different theological debates surrounding justification. He had mentioned that in a lot of these debates and discussions, whether they're with other Christians or whoever, if you don't say everything you believe every single time you speak, someone's going to think you either don't believe it or don't care about it, and that's ridiculous. But that's kind of what you have to put up with, because if you don't say it, they're not going to. People aren't going to assume the best about you. They're going to assume the worst and try to exploit something you never said. So
2,000 years,
kind of like
2,000 years from now, if someone looks back on the works of Nick Peters and his internet history, they will know without question that he affirmed the virgin birth.
Yeah, this is kind of our counter to dumb ideas like Jesus mythicism and other things like that. Yeah. And except this one, I think, actually has some traction because it makes the whole point on how silence really is not effective, and does it in a very humorous way.
Yeah. So, Nick, you do affirm the virgin birth, and you are on the autism spectrum. So, you know, what you actually suggested this as a show topic, and I want the audience to know that, and it's something that you, I guess, are passionate about, and so this raises a lot of questions. This raises questions about how do you know, the problem of evil. Why would God allow for something like autism? Are there good things that result from autism? All kinds of things. What's it like to be a Christian apologist, an author, and be autistic? So why don't you open us up a little bit into that direction?
Well, April is National Autism Awareness Month. And one of the first things I try and get with people is that, you know, we often assume that I came on Justin Browley's show, Unbelievable, once after the Haiti earthquake to talk about the problem of evil. I was brought on kind of like a last-minute guest, and Justin's a great guy. And he said to me, so Nick, what's it like for you, being someone on the spectrum, suffers with autism? And I said, Justin, let me make something clear here about the start, okay? I don't suffer with autism. Suffering is a choice. I live my life every day. I have suffering in it, just like everyone else does. I have things that trouble me that I don't like and all these other things, but I don't live like I have a death sentence hanging over my head because of a condition I have. When I was in Bible college, I made a really good friend named Paul there because he found out I had an interest in apologetics when I started making a point in class and I started quoting Ravi Zacharias to back my point. And he told me about the National Conference on Apologetics and about SES. First, I'd ever heard anything about this. And then he wanted me to go to a conference, so my parents wanted to make sure things were okay. Talked with him first and talked to him about autism and things like that. But from that point on, it was like a lifetime friendship. He's still a very good friend of mine here. And a few years ago, he calls me because of all things, he found out that his firstborn son is on the spectrum. And he wanted to know what I thought. Now, keep in mind, I don't say this to brag about myself, but because it's truth. It's that everyone else, when he told me, they treated it like he said, hey, my son has cancer or something of that sort. My first response was, I suggest you get on your knees and thank God right now, because now you are going to get to see the world through a whole new set of eyes.
Wow.
You hadn't seen it through before. You are going to see the world through the eyes of an Aspie. It is going to require that you think different and live different, but that will stretch you and make you grow, and you will be a better person for it. Love your son, give thanks for him, celebrate him, things of that sort. One of the first things you have to realize is, and I say this knowing there are some people on the spectrum who are non-verbal and far less capable of functioning than I am, and I get that. But something I've noticed about many people that are disabled, they are usually beacons of joy and happiness. Anyways, talk about people with, say, Down syndrome or other conditions. They can sometimes be some of the happiest people you meet.
Yeah, that's a really good point. My wife and I, when we hear about the idea of people selectively choosing to abort because of the chance
Gosh.
of that, it breaks our heart because my wife went to college for early education with special needs kids. And so she spent a lot of time with special needs kids, and of course, in ministry life, that happens. And we've just always been blown away. Now, my wife feels more deeply than I do. I said this recently, but like if I hear that that there was a school bus that went into a pond and a child died in Russia yesterday, and it's on the news, I'll think, man, that's terrible, and then I move on with my day. But she's over there crying. And so when she meets and thinks about these children that have Down syndrome or something, or certain forms of autism, she thinks, why in the world would someone not want to love this child and all that sort of thing? Because you're right, they are so filled with joy. That's a really great point. And people that don't recognize that, I guess, haven't spent enough time around people that deal with those things.
Yeah, I think it's just awful when you hear about someone like, say, Peter Singer, who wants to just go ahead and abort these children as if saying their lives aren't worth living. And I say, look, no one has a right to tell me outside me that my life is not worth living.
Yeah. Amen. Amen.
Well,
go
I
ahead.
have a question about how you first got into apologetics, because you've been doing this for I don't know, 20 some odd years now, maybe, or maybe a little less. So what first got your interest into apologetics and biblical studies? I know that you're really into that as well. So
well, before we get to that point, since this is about Autism Awareness Month, and that's included my story, why don't I just start with the beginning of my own story, and we'll get to apologetics from that. That when when I was a young child, my parents early on knew there was something different about me, something about the way I was interacting. It didn't seem, quote unquote, normal. And they also knew that for a young child, I was really smart. My parents tell me I had taught myself to read when I was a year old. And I had this fascination, apparently, with this big Bible we had at our house. In fact, I think I've got it right here in my office. And so when they'd see me, I'd be, going over the book, just looking over. They thought that I was just fascinated with the shapes of the letters and things like that. And so one day, apparently, I asked them about a word I didn't know. And I said, oh, that word is chapter. Because this Bible had it that when a new chapter began, say chapter 1, chapter 2, on and on and on. And sometime later, my dad took me to a department store and he sat me in front of a computer and went off to play some video game or something while I was there. Now, if anything is still like today, my dad's video games don't last very long. And when he came back, I was still at the computer, but so was a small crowd there. And he looked on the screen, and there on the screen were all the books of the Bible spelled correctly, in correct order, with how many chapters they had. I asked, did your son do this? I don't know. And clear up the screen said, okay, son, do it again. And apparently I did it again. That should tell you something's not normal here.
Right.
And when I was in school, I didn't follow normal social cues with anyone else. My diet was extremely finicky, still is to this day. And my parents didn't know what to do. I was in accelerated math from first grade on. And you ask anyone who knows me, I do math extremely well in my head.
Wow.
And so my parents kept taking me into the center for what's called birth defects, a term I hate today, but what are you going to do? And well, around fifth grade, it was said that I had autism. Now, at that time, that diagnosis didn't mean much to me. I didn't know what it meant, but it explained a lot of things. Now, when I was around elementary school, early middle school, at my parents' church, I was either the only one in Sunday school or the only boy in there. Now, a few years later, I'd probably cheer up being the only boy in there, but at that point, I didn't care for it. And me and my friends went to the church across the street, Baptist church. I said, I want to go there so I can be with friends. And my parents let me go. And it was at that church that during the service I first heard the whole gospel there. And so I thought, hey, this sounds like a pretty good deal. And I went with it. Now, somehow, throughout all my life, reading the Bible had always been something I'd done. Back when we first got the internet at our house, I thought I'd probably want to go on and talk about video games, which I did profusely. But no, I found myself going to Christian groups. I couldn't explain it, but that's where I went. And then going on there in high school, I entered a time of deep depression and darkness, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, everything. Didn't know what I was doing, wasn't sure about my salvation constantly. And when I graduated, about the only thing I could do worthwhile seemed was the Bible. And my parents went through voc rehab so I could get my education covered. And I told them, I want to go to Bible college. I want to be a pastor. Now today, I think I'd probably suck as a pastor overall, but back then, that's all I knew to do. And if you're going into ministry where you become a pastor, that's what you do. And I still laugh to this day. And they said, we think you should consider something like engineering or something. No offense to engineers, but it's just not what I wanted to do. He said, because we just don't think you're going to be very good at public speaking. Yes, they actually said that.
But now, wait a minute, Nick.
When,
But before you go on, the audience should
Mhm.
know that not only have you done a fair amount of public speaking, but you actually had a live public debate with one of the world's leading atheist popularizers, Dan Barker, a debate which you
Yep.
clearly won on the back
hmm
of your public speaking and incredible knowledge. So I just wanted to
hmm
throw that in there. It's a good point in the
Yeah.
story to mention it.
And when I was in Bible college and my senior year came around, you got to do these things called senior sermons. And that's when a senior gets up and does the whole service. And so what happened was I got to get up and speak to all the student body that was present and all the professors that were present. That would probably be about 1,000 people.
Mm.
And sometimes I'd come back to the college even a year later or so, and people would still say, "Boy, that was a great message that you gave that time." And I mean, usually if you give a message, people forget about it. Heck, most people forget their Sunday sermon, I think, within an hour or so, if that long. This one, I was getting compliments still weeks later about it. So to get back, I said, yeah, you're not going to be good at public speaking, which is kind of amusing because I'd much rather do public speaking than one-on-one private speaking, really. And I went to Bible college anyway, though. And while I was there, I'd also been on the internet and seeing all these people that were atheists coming in chat rooms. I had nothing to say, didn't know how to respond to them. And one day, I was in the lobby of the Bible college, and our student, for some reason, I just went up and talked to him and asked, "What are you studying?" Apologetics. What's that? I had never heard the term before, which I consider quite sad because here I've been an intellectual all my life in the church, and no one ever told me, "Hey, here's how you can use your intellect for the glory of God this way." No one.
And you've been at Bible college for 4 years and never heard it. That's
No,
strange.
I hadn't been there for 4 years yet. This was like my first year or so.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, I was just still a newbie there.
Oh, okay.
And they told me what it was, and I kind of followed it back in my mind. But then these atheists keep coming into these chat rooms like, I need to learn something here. The first book I read was someone recommended I read More Than a Carpenter by Josh McDowell, which was really good. But then I remembered someone told me once about this book by this journalist who used to be an atheist and set out to disprove Christianity and ended up becoming a Christian, and it was called The Case for Christ, and his name was Lee Strobel. I went and bought that book, and I refer to that book as the book that lit my fire. And I was going on from that day forward. I mean, my mother would start panicking every time I went to the bookstore because I'd come home with more and more books and just reading everything I could get my hands on, and doing so much so by the time I got to Southern Evangelical Seminary, eventually, I was way ahead of my class, I think, because I've been studying these things for years. I mean, you go to a class I actually had to take a class on general apologetics. 6 books we were assigned. I'd already read 5 of them on my own. And yeah, and I should also mention that before I went to seminary, since my mother was very concerned about things, since I'm on the spectrum, my parents didn't know where I could handle it. I moved into an apartment first in Tennessee, about 20 minutes or so away from my parents, to show I could live on my own. And I tell people the discussion process of how I brought about sharing this idea with my folks and getting approval was a very straightforward process. I came home from being out in town one day, sat down. My parents said, "Hey, I put money down on an apartment today." That was it. I did things the way I wanted to, and there wasn't room for debate at that point because I'd said, I want to do this. My parents didn't even know I was looking, but I wanted to prove myself. And so, that's kind of how I got into apologetics. And then while I was Charlotte, I also struggled with doubt, not being my own worst critic, self-doubt. Gary Habermas spoke at our church one time. I knew he dealt with doubt, so I said, hey, can I speak with you sometimes about doubt? Because I know he handles phone calls, questions, and email, things like that, about my own self-doubt. He said, sure, you can do that. And so every now and then I'd email him, and he'd give me some encouraging advice. And I had a job at the Christian Research Institute after a while.
Oh, wow.
And on August 10th, 2009, why that date, I remember, you'll find out later. I remember he was coming to the seminary to do a module on the historical Jesus, a week-long class. And I thought, I think I'll just drop by and say hi to him. I haven't seen him in a while. So I stopped by way before class would start, and we're in the lobby together. And he says, hey, Nick, you know who Mike Lacona is? And I say, yeah, you and he wrote a book together on the historical Jesus, and he was here a year or two ago debating Barterman on the resurrection of Jesus. I know who he is. Okay, did you know he has a daughter? No, I didn't know this. Says, yeah, me and some others back here were talking about him, her and how she's going through a hard time, which is kind of like autism light apart. And someone said, well, Nick Peters has Asperger's, and so he said, maybe you should talk to her some. I said, okay. And he invited me to come up to his class for a bit. I stayed for the first half, but then I needed to get back home to my roommate. And I went up to him afterwards and said, yeah, about this girl, can I get her email? And he said, sure, you can get it. And he said, but Nick, you know what she really wants? A boyfriend. A boyfriend. Now, I'd gone this route of internet dating before. It hadn't worked out well. I didn't want to do it again. So I was going to be on guard this time. And I got in touch with her, Allie. Get back together with her boyfriend. And by the way, now I know that day that I talked to her was actually her 19th birthday. So I talked with her some, and I agree, yeah, I'll help you. I'll be kind of like a mentor figure to you, everything like that. Just help you out through this time. And surround her with good women that I knew a lot from Theology Web to help her out. And I was just being a good friend. We were both agreed on this. Just friends, nothing more. Labor Day, we started dating. October, I went to meet her. I proposed. Hello?
Hey, Nick, we lost you for just a minute there. You said Labor Day you started dating.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Labor Day, started dating. I met her in October, went to her house to see her. I proposed to her in December. We were married in July.
Oh, my goodness.
We
Wow.
moved fast.
Yeah. And to what degree? Now, I didn't mention the Lycona connection because you're your own apologist, but
Yes,
to
I
what
am.
degree was that, I mean, as a guy who's into apologetics and appreciated Gary Habermas, and this is one of Gary Habermas' most well-known friends and disciples, I guess you could say. How did that, what was your thinking about that?
It was certainly very interesting. Something Mike told me is the first time he saw me, the way I looked because I was so non-social and things like that. He thought I was an atheist, actually. And then lo and behold, here I show up at his doorstep and say, hey, I'm here to date your daughter.
That's great.
And I said, I thought we'd meet again someday, but I didn't think it'd be under these circumstances. And Allie didn't really care for apologetics at the time, and I came along, and that changed. I mean, she still cares, but she is able to accept what I do. So, but yeah, I try to not really bring up my relation a lot of times because I don't want people to see me in light of that.
Yeah.
You know, people are just going to see, oh, well, he's a son-in-law, so. No, I was doing this long before I came across Mike.
Well, Nick, my dad was a megachurch pastor and a well-known evangelist, and so I understand completely people thinking of you in terms of some relative. And I can't say I was doing it long before I met my father. So
Yeah.
but no, people should know you are your own apologist, your own man,
Mm-hmm.
and have your own important contributions. It's just an interesting connection that you have with Mike.
Yeah, Mike and I have areas in apologetics we disagree on, areas even in New Testament study we disagree on. And sometimes someone might say something negative about him in a debate trying to score points with me. Like, look, you're allowed to think that way. I don't defend everything because Mike says it or Mike believes it. I think he's on some things. I think he's right on some things. Like with the inerrancy debate, I'm not totally sold on Mike's interpretation of Matthew 27, but it doesn't matter to me because it doesn't deny inerrancy as far as I'm concerned, and that's the big issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't agree with everything Braxton says. He doesn't agree with everything I say.
What?
I'm not going to defend anybody that says anything against his positions. But if someone were to say something against his character or person, that's where I would jump in and take offense. But I don't care if they. I might even agree with them.
Yeah. Well, as long as in his positions he affirms the virgin birth, which I do affirm.
Which I also affirm.
That's right. Yeah. Which I affirm.
Yeah. Well, that is a fascinating testimony, Nick. Anything else you wanted to say on that?
I can't really think of anything, but it sounded like Jonathan. Did you have another question for me?
Well, kind of. See, my son, he's on the autism spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
He's high functioning.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is he's just now getting into apologetics. For him, it goes through phases. When he was a kid, it would go from pirates and everything was pirates to knights. Then everything is knights, and then you go on to zombies and army, and as he gets older, there's the fixation on one thing.
Oh yes.
And he's come around to apologize. Now, when I say high five, he's also kind of he's quite sociable as well. And it's interesting when Braxton he's in the youth group at the church, and when Braxton was going to speak at our youth group, they said, "Now I want you to know there's this kid who thinks he knows it all, and he's going to talk over you." And he was like, "Oh, you mean Noah? Yeah, that's Jonathan's son." but it's interesting that if you're on the spectrum, even in my case, is how you get fixated on one thing and you're able to focus and dive in. Now he's fixated on two things. He's 17, so it's girls and apologetics. But did you have somebody kind of see? I don't want to. Well, let me ask you this. Is it better to help direct his interests or let him become interested in what he's interested in? And what do you think is a better approach?
Because definitely let him be interested in what he's interested in, provided it's nothing immoral or improper like that. I mean, if he's if he develops some fixation of, say, internet pornography, don't let him be interested in that.
Yeah,
but if it's something good and wholesome, even if you don't get it, let him be interested in it. And the whole fixation thing makes perfect sense to me. I mean, I'm one of those guys who, aside from some Braves baseball, never got into professional sports at all. Honestly, when we watch the Super Bowl here, there's someone at our house who pays a whole lot of attention to the game and someone who just watches the commercials, and it's not who you'd think it'd be in a traditional household. But I understand the whole fixation thing, because I did the exact same thing, and I still do the exact same thing. When we get interested in a topic, we either have total full-blown obsession with a topic, or we just don't care. Sorry. I've been talking to my dad lately. Something humorous we discussed is that with some certain television shows, that if he developed an interest in it first, for whatever reason, and then he got me interested, and I started getting interested in it, before too long, I knew more about the show than he did. And since he grew up watching the Adam West Batman series. Now, I think that series is just awesome. Allie looks at this. This is just so cheesy and corny. Like, yeah, that's what makes it awesome. Okay? And I actually bought the whole series on DVD, and I've watched all of it. And I know more about that series than he does now. And when I was growing up, he was watching Cheers. Now I know more about that series than he does. But the main one in my life has been Smallville. And that came on. That was my obsession at the time. I mean, I think it was the 4th season premiere, my grandmother called, and I was still living with my folks at the time. And she wanted to talk to my dad, I think. And my mom said, "Oh, he and Nick are watching their show right now. They're not going to come to the phone." And she said, "Well, tell them I'm having a heart attack." And we said, "Okay, well, call her an ambulance, and we'll be there when the show's over." Okay. I mean, we did that every night together, and this is how obsessed I was with the show. Okay. Yeah. You had this show on for 10 years. You had 18 episodes, longest of any Superman series ever. I had all of the episode titles memorized in order. Go straight through them. I can still tell you so much about every single episode today.
Yeah, my son, he loves the Save Me theme song, and we used to have to listen to that all the time, because I would have it on my phone, and he would ask me to play it every morning on the way to school. I'd take him to school every day, and he wants to hear Save Me, because he was the same way with Lord of the Rings. I had read Fellowship of the Rings and The Hobbit, and when he got interested in the movies, then he got interested in the books, and now he's read, he's blowing his way through Christopher Tolkien's stuff that he's put out, because he just wants to know all of that lore. And I consider myself a fan, but he's a fanatic, in the real sense of the world.
The thing with Clark Kent also is John Schneider, who plays Jonathan Kent, said it very well in an interview. He said, in his own way, Clark Kent is a special needs child, that he has to be treated differently from all the other children. And you never really think about that, but when you see Smallville growing up, and I'm thinking, I can relate to Clark Kent.
Wow.
He wants to be able to fit in, and yet he feels excluded from everything around him because of his abilities. And his relationship with his dad was so awesome that, honestly, the night that Jonathan Kent died in the series, it hit me really hard that night. I remember going to bed, and I was just super depressed, and my mom was saying, "Are you going to be okay?" I said, "Yeah, I will be."
Yeah, that was the 100th episode where he was. Wasn't he in the barn arguing with Lionel when he had the heart attack? Yeah, I remember that too.
Hey guys, did you know that
Braxton, who looks like Lex Luthor, I could have swore that he looked like the actor
Michael Rosenbaum.
Michael Rosenbaum, yeah.
Best Lex Luthor ever.
Did you know, Nick? I was going to mention him. Did you know that he's from our area where we live? He's from Newburgh, Indiana, and went to the high school that was a stone's throw from our campus. And in fact, he came back here and made a movie, some movie nobody ever cared about. But my secretary actually was the what do you call notary public for something that they had, and she's mentioned in the credits. So there's a little connection. And interestingly, for the world of apologetics, one of the actresses, Allison Mack, ended up as a part of the Nexium cult, that
Yeah.
Nexium cult that was very
Mm-hmm.
popular. But I just thought that's all I can say
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
Smallville.
yeah, that was very odd for me also because before Ari came into my life, Allison Mack was my celebrity crush at the time.
Right.
Hey, I like the girls that were smart too, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Michael Rosenbaum as Lex Luthor, heck, my dad and I felt kind of guilty some in the first few seasons of the show because we were thinking, gosh, I really like Lex. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone would have wanted to have had a friend like Lex Luthor, and yet
Yeah.
you can. But yeah, that's the whole thing with obsessions. I mean, that's why I can pick up a video game I haven't played in years and still go through it like it's second nature
Yeah.
to me. I just memorize all this stuff super easily, all these things I need to do.
Well, unfortunately, with my son, he's gotten into apologetics and theology, but like a lot of us, and I remember at 17, I did this too. He's gotten into prophecy, and of course,
Mm-mm.
I'm not a dispensationalist. So even though I don't want to guide his interest, is there maybe nudge him away from that? I don't know. It's always the temptation to say, don't, and no, I'm
Oh, that'd
not.
be the
No,
worst thing ever if he became a
no, no, no,
dispensationalist.
no, no. No offense to our dispensationalist friends, but because if you get so fixated on it, there's a chance you can go off the deep end and end up like John Hagee or something. So
Yeah, I used to be very fixated on prophecy too. Today I'm an Orthodox preterist.
yeah,
And now I tell
amen.
people if there's any job I would like to have, really, it'd be to be a prophecy expert. It'd be an awesome position because you can get to write a book, be a for known expert, and someone everyone looks up to and respects. You'll be asked to speak everywhere, get paid to speak. People buy your books, they're all bestsellers. You can be completely wrong in everything still, provably wrong, and you can repeat the same thing just a few years later, and people still
Right.
call you an expert. It's such a great gig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Actually,
if you want to do something about what you could consider maybe is getting something like a Zondervan's Counterpoints book
yeah.
with different views on prophecy and end times and things like that. Now, when I married my wife, she believed in the rapture, and she also knew that I'm an Orthodox preterist, and sometimes we'd be driving together, and she'd say, "Well, what do you think about such and such in relation to end times?" And I'd tell her, and then she'd say, "Well, what do you think someone from my position would say?" And in this case, here's an important. I could have given an answer that made the position look really, really stupid very easily. I never did. I made sure to give what I thought would be the best answer from that position and let her make her own mind. Now
Yeah.
she's not a preterist, but she doesn't believe in a rapture after her own research, and that's far better to me. I don't want her to believe something just because I believe it. I want her to take my opinion seriously, but geez, I'm not infallible. I can make mistakes.
Yeah. Well, there's something when you have a 17-year-old son, daddy doesn't know as much as he does, and
Mm-hmm.
it won't be until he's in his 20s or 30s before he realizes I actually knew something. But
Mm-hmm.
he's also smarter than me about everything at 17. So there's
Mm-hmm.
also that little aspect. But yeah, I was kind of wanting to get because he right now he's reading Mere Christianity from
Good.
C.S. Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then he goes and he watches uh, oh, I can't think of his name. Not
John
a
Hagee,
bat. No, no, he doesn't get into to
David
those
Wood.
people. It's
David Jeremiah.
well, he loves David Wood for the Islam, so he's
Oh
really
yeah.
big into Islam too. But maybe it's David Jeremiah, one of those prophecy gurus that's popular. Um, but yeah, maybe I think that might have been it. But yeah, he just thinks it's super interesting, and I guess when you're 17 and you like the idea of locusts being Apache helicopters raiding America or whatever, maybe that's all cool. But yeah, I need to get him away from that
Nick,
stuff. But
Nick, the only thing
Yes.
I want to know about your wife's beliefs is does she affirm the virgin birth?
Oh, she does, but she refuses to say it like that because she doesn't want to placate me or anything.
Yeah.
But she said if it ever starts trending on Facebook, she will say it. So people, make the dream come alive here, okay?
Yeah.
Let's get this baby trending. IATVB.
Yeah. Now she does get into some discussions of theology, because I do remember she was active on that forum, Theology Web, because that's where I first remember seeing her as well. I didn't even know that the two of y'all knew each other until one of her pictures had both of y'all in it.
Yeah.
But that came, that's where I kind of realized, because that's when I first figured out, and I didn't even know, because y'all used nicknames. Yours was Apologia Nick. No, Apologia Phoenix.
Still is.
Right? Still is. Yeah. And I can't remember what hers was.
Doodles.
Oh, yeah. But I do remember that she would actually post in some of these conversations as well. So she knows a thing or two about all this stuff, and does have her own views.
She does. She's her own worst critic, even more so than I am.
So Nick, let's get back to the issue at hand. So
yes, please.
When it comes to autism, obviously there's a lot that people who perhaps are on the spectrum could be inspired by what you've just said. I mean, even down to you being assertive enough about getting your own apartment and things, but certainly about going to Bible college and then seminary and going against what everybody else said about public speaking and all these kind of things. But so let's go back to Justin Brierly's question. You said that beautifully. I thought that was really beautiful what you said about I don't suffer. Suffering is a choice. But how do you explain if someone did challenge you on this issue and say, okay, like you said, you are high functioning, but there are people who are not and who really do have difficulties there. Would you just run a typical theodicy or something? What would you say in response?
Everyone has difficulties. We all just have different difficulties of various kinds. What might be difficult for you could be very easy for me, and what's very easy for me could be extremely difficult for you. And we all just have to learn to deal with it in our own ways. And one of the best things I've learned in my life really is, aside from judgment, God doesn't owe me anything, not a single thing. I can't go to him and say, hey, you owe me this. Gosh, how presumptuous and arrogant that is. And if I realize that, and that means everything he does allow me that's good in my life is a gift to me. And I should celebrate that gift. Now, you talked earlier about, difficulties some people have on the spectrum. Are there good things? Are there bad things? In all honesty, if it was announced today, everyone's looking for a cure for this coronavirus. If it was announced today, though, that a cure had just come out for autism and everyone can go get it free if they want to. And my wife would want to be one of the first ones in line because she thinks she didn't get the good stuff that can come from it. For me, I would say, nope, no thanks. I'm passing that up. I'm keeping my condition. Thank you very much. I like it.
Well, that's awesome because, one thing is you did get what you just described as the quote unquote good stuff. And that is the ability at a young age to write out all of the books of the Bible spelled correctly and in order. And then, of course, you applied that to video games later. But I'm sure that is very helpful in biblical scholarship and apologetics. And that answers the question I was going to ask. I was going to ask, what would you say, and this is kind of a reframing of what I've already asked, but what would you say to an atheist if an atheist said, yeah, some loving God you've got, if he wanted to, he could snap his fingers and there would be no more autism. And yet there are so many people with autism today. Sure sounds like your God loves everyone and cares for everyone. And it sounds like your answer would be, yeah, because along with it sometimes comes the good stuff, right?
Yeah. And, I refer to the passage in Romans 8, all things work together for good to those who love the Lord. In gaming terminology, I say this is the ultimate cheat code here. It tells you if you love God, somehow everything will work out to your favor. Somehow, if you love God. Now, if you don't love the Lord, not a guarantee. But if you do, all things will work together for your good. That's a pretty good guarantee.
Yeah.
Now,
And
I do have one question for you.
Mhm.
One more question. It's a church-related question. What are your thoughts on what could a church, what do local churches need to do to have more of this kind of awareness, and what kind of things do they need to be mindful? I'm not a big fan of, well, let's do a special program. No, don't do that. But what kinds of things do they need to be mindful of and aware of as they try to incorporate more adults, youth, kids in the spectrum, who are on the spectrum to whatever degree? What do you think churches need to be made aware of? What do you think they could do more in terms of outreach and inclusion?
Okay, one thing. Please eliminate church greeters. Oh my gosh, I can't stand seeing those people there every time. Look, in our world, unless we know you well, we are usually on guard a lot because, we can't read the social cues, so we don't know if this person means us good or evil at all.
Yeah.
And usually our thing is very black and white on that. If you come up and you are very exuberant and very friendly with us all of a sudden, we want to run for the hills. We do not trust it. We hate it. And, if someone came into your church and they were in a wheelchair, no one would challenge them to a foot race. That would be very rude. But we have an invisible condition hanging over us, and yet we're expected often to just be like everyone else. Where, no, that doesn't happen, at least not that easily. We have to work to overcome it. I can come up to you and I might not look you in the eyes when I'm speaking to you, but that doesn't mean I'm trying to be rude or anything. It's just that's the way I function. Looking in the eyes is extremely difficult for me. This is some of my own in-laws had to learn. Sometime after we got married, we'd come over and we'd visit sometimes, and they'd be talking to me, and I'd be playing on my 3DS or something, or my phone, something like that, and I'd say, he's not even listening to anything we say. And then I started repeating everything they said back to them, and able to engage in a conversation all while playing my game. Said, well, he really is paying attention. He just, for me, it's easier to do it if I multitask like that. And so I'd say, don't go with church greeters with us. If they're fine with some people, okay. But if we're coming in and we're on the spectrum, don't greet us with the greeters. Let us be our own person. Give us time to come forward on our own. And I definitely say, watch the kind of language you use in a church. Churches that use what I call Christianese really are going to drive us away, I think. Speaking in the church inside language that everyone's supposed to know, and Jimmy, many of these claims I don't really pay attention to. Anyway, I really don't like when people come in and say, well, geez, what do you think the Holy Spirit is telling you to do? And or if they ask, well, do you feel love of God in your life? Or what do you feel led to do? Oh my gosh, at some churches when they say give him the offering as you feel led. Sometimes I'd be tempted to go in and publicly go up front and just publicly put in 1 penny and say, that's what I felt led to do, and see if they complain or not.
Yeah.
About
Well,
it.
and the Christianese, Nick, we call it evangeli speak. It's coined by Jonathan Pritchett.
Evangeli speak.
Evangeli speak. That can be a problem for people that are not on the spectrum. For instance, To people that don't know the Evangeli speak or the Christianese, taking a bath in the blood of Jesus sounds like a terrifying and violent prospect.
Yeah, and keep in mind, those of us on the spectrum, we tend to think very literalistically. I was talking
Yes.
with someone the other day about something they said what needed to be done. They said 30 days. In my mind, me thought, oh, they mean 30 days. And he said, oh, wait, I need to correct myself because I know how concrete you think. I just think this means just a long time, not exactly 30 days. And if you tell me you're going to be somewhere in 10 minutes, I expect you to be there in 10 minutes. I have my watch set. There was a time that I was calling Gary Habermas one talk with him about something when when Ari and I were dating, and he was showing us wine and and how I was supposed to call at such and such time. He said, you know what? He hasn't called yet. He's late. And there goes the phone ringing right then, because I have my phone with me right here, and that supposed time was 5:15. I was waiting, then as soon as it said 5:15, boom, hit it. Don't call at 5:14. Don't call at 5:16. Call at 5:15.
Well, this
And
brings to my mind, Nick, a question. Maybe you've thought about this. It's just come to my mind right now. Do you, as a person with an interest in biblical scholarship, do you see any of the biblical authors or characters as potentially autistic?
I've thought about that some. Paul could have been that way. He was timid face to face, but bold went away.
Mm-hmm.
And historically speaking, I'm a big fan of Thomas Aquinas. I think he was quite likely on the spectrum as well. There's a story that he's at this party, this feast, and everyone around him is talking, laughing, cutting up. He's just sitting there. He's got his product resting his head on his chin, just sitting there, not saying a thing. Everyone's coming, and all of a sudden the silence breaks, and he goes, hits the table, and says immediately, "And that was said of a Manichees." Everyone freezes immediately, and I've been told the king, whatever he says now, write it down. And he also used to be made fun of by his classmates because he was known as the dumb ox by them because he was so heavy. And there was a story that apparently some of his classmates was saying, "Hey Thomas, look outside, there's a flying pig." And Thomas goes and he looks and he looks, and they say, "Oh look, Thomas, he's so dumb he believes a pig would fly." And how he supposedly he said, "I would rather believe that a pig could fly that my fellow monks would."
Wow. I'd rather believe a pig could fly than that my fellow monks would lie to me. Is that what you said?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So I think he was on the spectrum. But to get back also a little bit more about literalistic thinking here, I remember a lot of things growing up that my parents sometimes would talk about all these performers who are performing on Broadway, where not too far from our house, maybe about 10 or 15 miles away, was an area called Fountain City. The main road there was called Broadway. I kept wondering, why are all these people coming to that street to perform, and why don't I ever see them there? Or I used to think my dad was violating all those commercials because they always said, don't drink and drive, and here he has a coffee with him every time while he's driving. I mean, isn't that a violation of the law there? And I was a game show junkie, still am, even though I'm pretty sure if the death of cable game show was over, I'm sadly be coming to an end. But I remember watching during summer vacation a commercial for a pain medication, and a guy giving a talk saying, listen to doctors. Doctors are adults, just like you and me. And I was thinking, I'm not an adult now. I'm a kid. Don't say that. Tick me off. But I mean, that's the kind of literalistic thinking that we do. Everything is pretty much said in this wooden, literalistic way, and that's how we generally interpret things.
Yeah. No, my son Noah, he's the same way. And in fact, he gets accused of being a Pharisee, is what they used to call him at his Christian school, because he wanted the rules to be followed, and him more than the teacher would call people out if they deviated
Oh, yes.
even a little bit. And so they would call him the Pharisee because he was so legalistic over every rule.
Rules provide order for us. We like things. We like to know how things are going to go that way. My parents got me watching Monk as well. And yes, before too long, I knew more about that series. And I can see a lot of myself in Adrian Monk, too.
Mm.
And I remember reading in one of the novels, because I read all the Monk novels, about how they had a can of Lysol at their place. A can that had Lysol wipes, and they used a Lysol wipe to clean off a can. I thought, makes perfect sense to me. Why not do that?
Yeah.
And so he went, I tend to be extremely that way too. I'm extremely moralistic. I want to make sure I don't violate any moral codes. And if I'm on my computer, and we've all had this happen before, I'm sure, where you click something and then something pops up and it's something a guy should not be watching. And after I realize what it is, I turn it off immediately because I don't want that garbage. And I'll go to Allie and I'll be acting like I've committed the unpardonable sin in front of her and say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You're the only woman I want to look at. I'm so sorry. It was an accident. I didn't mean to. Because I don't want her to ever have to go through and check my browser history and think, geez, what was he looking at? And now she doesn't have those kinds of fears about me. I can be in my office all day long and on my computer, and she's not going to be worried I'm looking at that stuff because she knows how moralistic I am.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. We've been at this for about an hour, and this has opened my eyes to some of the stuff that people on the spectrum encounter. Is there anything else that you think should be discussed or added to this, Nick? I mean, I'm sure there's. We could spill an ocean of ink talking about what it's like to experience this sort of a, as you put it, condition. But what else do you think should definitely be said?
One of the things about people on the spectrum as well is we tend to usually be very finicky eaters. If you've ever seen the movie Adam, about a young man on the spectrum, he pretty much has mac and cheese every single meal. And that's not unheard of on the spectrum. And for me, it used to be that I'd go out to the store and I'd buy a Tombstone pizza and I'd break into quarters and have a quarter every night for dinner. Now, my parents tried for decades, 25 years or so, to get me to change my diet. Doctors tried to do it. They tried to get my friends to change my diet, anything. I refused to budge one bit. Didn't want to, didn't have any desire to. Then I was married to Allie for less than a year, and then changes started to happen, and she didn't even have to push for them. I don't know. I'm not sure if you guys have noticed that women just seem to have this strange persuasive power over us guys. It's quite an anomaly. But with Allie in my life, I really wanted to be a better person in that area. Now, one of the things I really want to get past as well is my extreme hydrophobia. I would love, I think, to be able to go swimming with me well, and I'm terrified of water, and so that's something I'm having to work on. And hopefully someday we'll get enough funding in so I could take really good lessons from someone very skilled who works with people with phobias.
Yeah. Well, interesting that your program is called Deeper Waters, huh?
Yeah, the irony is not lost on her either. But my reference to it is just saying that, I think in Christianity we stay in the shallow end so often. We never really go deep in our faith at all, and I want to encourage people to go deep.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, Nick, this has been a blast, and there you're a person that's in the apologetics world that more people need to know about. And I encourage people, and perhaps I'll put it in the description of this video, your debate with Dan Barker. I remember talking
Yeah.
with you before you had that debate, and I just don't know how it could have gone any better than it went.
Yeah, it's quite amusing me because this was my first debate, so I was really nervous going up there, which I honestly was wondering why, because I've debated people like Barker online for years. I mean, Mike would tell you honestly that if it came to something like, say, Jesus mythicism, I'd be the better person to talk to in that area because most scholars don't bother with that. So there's all these weird, convoluted arguments that they don't look at because it's not a subject in the academy for debate. But I've had to deal with those, so I can say plenty of things about Jesus mythicism. So if Dan Barker had wanted to go there, I would have been more than ready. Like I said, I was extremely nervous, and then the very day of, I was still nervous. But the moment I got up and started speaking, everything changed instantly.
Yeah.
And I was in the element, in the zone, in my game. And really, in my world, pretty much games are an analogy for everything. And I tell people, like, whatever arena I enter into, I play that game to win it. I don't settle for being less. I want to be the very best at whatever it is I'm doing.
I always tell those people in apologetics when they say, "Well, apologetics is not about winning arguments." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, it is.
It is.
Don't say that. It may not just be about that, but it's it's about that kind of stuff." And at Biola, they used to tell us to always be winsome. That gets on my nerves too. I don't want to be winsome.
Yeah. To quote N.T. Wright, apologetics is more than winning arguments, but it is not less.
That's right. There you go.
And as for the whole being winsome thing, no, I don't buy it. Because look, you look at the things Jesus and Paul said in the Bible, hardly you could call them winsome many times. Jesus was not a bundle of cheer when he said to the Pharisees, "You're whitewashed tombs, you are a brood of vipers, you're sons of hell." Yeah, that's
right. He was engaged in challenge riposte throughout the entire Gospels and had no interest in being polite. He had interested in wooing getting the crowds to be amazed at how he would issue his riposte to the challenges. So people who
Paul, I mean, I think about one of my favorite lines in Galatians when he talks about the circumcision crowd. He says, as for them, I just wish they'd go the whole way and emasculate themselves. And he says that. You can't get around it. And my thinking with this is, there are some people, and we see them online. We know who they are. They don't give a darn about truth. Sadly, they have vendettas out there. They have an emotional argument against Christianity. They are not really asking questions to learn. They are asking questions to destroy. I have no delusions that they are really open to a conversation with me. So when I'm debating with them, am I trying to win them over to Jesus? No, I am not. I am trying to win over the audience that is watching, but I do not see. And a strong show can do that. I want them to see people can be strong in their Christianity and not afraid. And if that requires mockery and sarcasm on my part, then so be it. Because you know what? Some positions are just stupid and need to be treated that way. You do not honor them by doing that. You don't honor a skeptic by coddling him and saying, "Oh, well, that idea that Jesus never existed, that's a very interesting idea. Thank you for sharing." No, that is a ridiculous idea. Take care of it immediately. And by the way, I've actually done a debate on this topic. On the Mind Renewed program, I debated Ken Humphreys, who runs JesusNeverExisted.com on this very topic. So, like I said, I'm familiar with it. And if stepping on someone's toes is the only way I can give them to move to the gospel, I will step on their toes as hard as I can. A good book someone might want to read on this would be Doug Wilson's book, The Serrated Edge, I think it's called. It's about using sarcasm and satire in evangelism. Because like, if you go and you read your Bible, you will see that in so many places. I mean, remember Elijah with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. You know, maybe your God's on vacation. Maybe he's sitting on the toilet right now.
Yeah.
He's mocking them. And today we'd be told, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. Where it certainly seemed to work for people in the Bible.
That's right.
So the three things that we know about Nick Peters from this for sure is that not only does he, so number one, he affirms the virgin birth. And number two,
which I do affirm.
There are two types of people there are two types of people that you are not in favor of, and that are mythicists and church greeters.
Yeah.
Well,
Babylon B actually had a story once with new escape room made with being trapped in a room with church greeters. Oh, yes, that would be terrifying.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, Nick, it's been fun, and we're going to encourage people to get your books, and we'll put links to those in the description, as well as the video to the Dan Barker debate, and also your ministry links as well. So listen, we really appreciate you. Glad we did this, and glad, hopefully it will be helpful to people with autism and parents of people with autism, or spouses or friends or whatever else, and churches. And we need to get rid of those great. Listen, we've been saying it for years, some of us, that there's not a big movement, but it is a grassroots movement to get rid of church greeters. And if that's one thing people take away from this show today, I think we'll have done our job. Thanks so much, Nick. And listen, we'll send these links around when they come out. But Jonathan, anything to add before we go?
No, I'm just glad that we had him on. I would like to talk about other stuff. Him and I share an interest in a lot of the Greco-Roman culture and the Bible backgrounds of the New Testament, and big fans of the old context group and all that stuff. So we need to talk about that stuff on a different show.
Absolutely.
Because we're trying to get more people familiar with that so they can understand their Bibles better. So,
and honestly, honor and shame language, it's something that really comes natural to us on the spectrum, I think, because we're measuring people around us in the language of honor and shame and trustworthiness. That if you build trust with us, then we trust you. But if you lose it, you've lost it. I mean, we are constantly monitoring people in that way, and we're kind of immune to peer pressure in some ways, because we don't really understand the whole thing anyway. So that wasn't much of a struggle for me growing up. I mean, I want to have a good reputation, but I don't just have to fit in with everyone. I like being different.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah. Nick Peters, folks, and we will have Nick back on. And listen, if you'd like to support what we're doing here on the show, we will continue doing this for free. But if you would like to get some extra stuff, 28 lectures, seminary level lectures on apologetics, on a variety of subjects. I'm going to add a new series to that for patrons, and as well as videos on how we make our videos, all the stuff we use, all the software, all the gear. You can visit us if you want to get that, and extra episodes we've never done, and free ebooks, and rock music by Jonathan Pritchett from his Contemporary Christian Music Days. And you can get all of that at patreon.com/Trinity Radio. We thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on Trinity Radio.